Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. Students of Reddit, have you ever lost your temper with a teacher? What's your story? Not me, but a girl flipped shit on my economics professor cause she kept cancelling class without sending out emails. The girl only had that class on Fridays and drove an hour to get there. It sucked she got caught in traffic just to get a note next to the classroom saying cancelled. Ugh. My college did the same thing to part-time students. We make special arrangements to leave work earlier on days that we have classes so that we can get through the rush hour traffic in time. And then when we get there we find out the class has been cancelled. At this age in technology they should be using an e-notice board or forum system to send out mass announcements, or at the very least email. A friend of mine wanted to go to a certain university that was out of state and somewhat tough to get into. The counselor told him not to waste his time as he would never get in. This pissed him off, so he went to the principal, who told him to trust the counselor as that was her job. He applied anyways, got accepted, and taped 2 copies to the counselor and principal's door. He couldn't afford to go anyways, but he was trying to prove a point. A true hero. The feeling when you make it is the best. I talk from experience on this one. Oof, that brought back a bad memory. My mother and father passed when I was in my final year of school. I was off school for a while around the time of the second funeral. When I returned to school my tutor decided it was her job to tell the class what had happened with me, right there in front of everyone instead of letting me do it on my own terms. To say I lost my temper would be an understatement. Whoa. The kind of person who think they're helping by making it worse. I flipped my shit on a logic professor who lost my assignments records. You didn't do them. I'm looking at your grades and they are zeros, that's why you have AD. Nee. Look you dipshit. I have papers you've graded right here. They aren't even good, but they are not zeros. It was over the phone. But eventually I read through his comments on my papers while he was trying to argue with me. That's when he's like, okay, that doesn't sound made up. Scan your papers and email them in. Went from a D to a B. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Holy shit. You actually called him a dipshit. I said worse tbh. I already had a D, so I was going to have to retake it anyway. My dog died like a day before and another professor said I couldn't take a final because I was a minute late. I thought I was going to have to drop out. I flipped on several teachers, but this one still bugs me. One of my best friends in high school had died in a car accident, and a couple days later my friends and I told my teacher we would not be able to make it to class because of the viewing. She then proceeded to tell us that we need to plan our days better and how irresponsible it was of us. I've never felt so much rage. Screw you, Mrs. Weaver. That is an unacceptable response from her. You must really be out of your mind to say something like that. Unacceptable is putting it lightly. You need to plan your days better. Well, excuse me for not planning for an unexpected death of a friend. My IT teacher wanted to inspect my work, spreadsheets or a Word document or something. Anyway, she accidentally deleted the file. I was upset and tried to point out she just deleted my work. She started to shout at me telling me I should have saved frequently. I shouted back telling her that wasn't the issue. She outright deleted the file. It got pretty heated. My parents were called. We were outright yelling at each other for a good couple of minutes to the point where we were both in tears. I was about 14 at the time. She should have known better. A few years later my sister had her when she went to that school and that same teacher berated my sister calling her names etc. What a beach. Edit. It was a long time ago and I was pretty stressed at the time. I can't remember exactly how, but after several attempts, I wasn't able to restore it. Looking back with what I know now, there are things I could have done to restore it now, even going as far as giving myself admin rights and having a poke around. But I was 14 at the time being taught IT by a French teacher. How do you accidentally delete a file? How are you the IT teacher and accidentally delete a file? I know a chap who once lost it in a lesson and threw a chair at the teacher, some years, like 15 or so back, and the two are now good friends. Essentially, a discussion had turned into an argument, holding up the rest of the lesson, with the chap basically being awkward and pedantic, not letting it go. getting unduly steamed up himself and apparently not realizing that everyone was getting pretty tired. The teacher made some snide remark and the chap flipped, threw a chair and walked out. He waited outside though cooling off, and afterward the teacher went outside as well. Said something to the effect of, "I think we both ought to apologize for what just happened," and so they did. And all was well. I had a teacher throw a softcover dictionary at my face once. He was and still is my favorite teacher I've ever had. I had a teacher throw a book at the kid in front of me. The kid dodged, and the book hit me instead. Can confirm the teacher was both of our favorites. A couple of weeks into my senior year of high school, the president gave a speech about the importance of school or something. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. Anyway, all of the teachers in my school had to set up their projectors so we could watch it. My math teacher couldn't figure out how to get her projector working. So, me being the nerdy kid, I offered to help. She had a fit, started screaming about how she wasn't stupid and how I needed to just sit down and shut up. After a few more minutes of her failing to fix it, she pointed at me and ordered me to fix it. I said, "Fix it yourself." She told the whole class to go next door to watch the speech in that teacher's room. When we got up to leave, she pulled me to the side and told me that when the class got back I was going to stand up and apologize for being so rude to her. I refused and went to join the rest of the class. She spent the rest of the year making my life miserable. She told me on several occasions that she was going to make sure that I failed her class. Sure enough, I failed her class. Only class I ever failed. Edit. Since people are asking why I didn't report it, I did. My parents went to the administrators, but they didn't want to do anything and said it was an issue for the math department head. The department head was a good friend of my teacher and took her side. Edit 2. People are also asking how she can fail me at math since the answers are either right or wrong. I would turn in homework assignments and she wouldn't get them. Students weren't allowed to keep a copy of the tests because the school was worried about test compromises. So she could basically give me whatever she wanted on them and I couldn't prove anything. If there was a dispute about the test grades, the school's policy was to have the department head regrade the test. But as I mentioned, the department head was a friend of hers and found that all of the tests that I disputed were graded correctly. Whether or not that was true I don't know since I never got to see them. What a dong of a teacher. Simply abusing the power she has. It's ridiculous that somebody like that is teaching. There was a high school English teacher, Ms. Blades, who was ignoring me for a while. It's worth mentioning that she didn't really like me for some reason. I wasn't a bad or annoying kid. In fact, I was very non-confrontational and mostly kept to myself in and out of class. So I don't know what that was about. Anyway, I had my hand up because I had to use the bathroom and she kept pacing about the room, answering other kids' questions, but would glance at me and immediately look away. After about 5 minutes with my hand up and getting ignored, and about to shit my pants, I whistled as loud as I could. Interrupting anyone was completely out of character for me. Well, once upon a time, I had a chipped one of my front teeth, so I could whistle extremely loud because of it. My whistle was just that. It was the whistling equivalent of firing a gun in a closed room. Absolutely deafening. The entire room got quiet and she snapped her head around so fast. As her name might suggest, Ms. Blades was staring daggers into my face. Then one kid goes, "He just called you a dog." What? Then she gained serious momentum from that one off and said, "Oh, I don't think so. You think I'm a dog? You think I'm a dog?" I got sent to the principal's office for disrespecting an ignorant teacher. I used the bathroom on the way there. Edit. So, there have been a lot of assumptions about Ms. Blades lol. I just wanted to say that I can totally vouch for her competence as a teacher, and she was often quite fun and energetic. But she did have one hell of an attitude if you didn't follow her rules. Couldn't you just go to the bathroom without asking? If she interrupted you, you'd have gotten her attention and been able to tell her what you were doing. It's a lose-lose situation. From my experience, if you walk out to go to the bathroom because they won't acknowledge you or let you, you get written up or the resource officers sent after you. And if you make a scene to get their attention, even in a small way, if they're a prick you get written up. Duck the rigid structure of the educational system. Join our community Discord, link in description. Did a math test and on the paper you could only mark your answer. You had to do the calculations on another paper. Long story short, my teacher lost my calculations paper and wouldn't admit it. He said I didn't hand it over, that I cheated and some other crap. So I went to the school supervisor and asked to take the test again and she let me. My teacher asked to look while I did the test. He made another test. Why harder? I freaking aced it, right on front of him. He hated my guts for the rest of high school and I couldn't care less. Edit. Still don't understand why we couldn't do calculations on the main paper. I had a kid in my math class of my sophomore year of high school that was kind of slow at math, but got the hang of it eventually. The teacher didn't like him for whatever reason and made that publicly known when the kid was sick and missed a test. He came in the next day and asked to retake the test, and the teacher said he would email him when he could come take it. Well, he never did. So 2 weeks pass and the kid is like, when can I take that test? Mr. Collins? And Mr. Collins said you never came in to take it, so you get to 0. Tough luck. So the kid stands up and very calmly and firmly states, you told me you would email me when to come take it, and you never did. I just lost all respect for you because of that. Mr. Collins threatened to send him to ISS if he didn't sit back in his seat, and the kid replied, I'm going to go ahead and go to ISS so I don't lose my temper on you. That was really not cool, and he just went to ISS. Mr. Collins never let him retake that test. Duck math teachers who want you to fail. Edit. I know you guys are joking, but for those lucky few out there who don't know what ISS means, it's in school suspension. Edit 2. Stop with the space jokes. Duck Mr. Collins. I once flipped on my German teacher. I'm German. She obviously didn't like me and her marks were biased as duck. This one time she gave me an F on a poetry interpretation. Grading that is ridiculous as you can just interpret it as whatever and the mark depends on the teacher's mood. I always got an A for grammar, because the beach is to give me credit where my work is quantifiably good. After handing the papers back out to the students, she did some debriefing about the whole thing, comparing what everyone wrote. She told the whole class how good my thoughts on the poem and some of the passages that I wrote were and wanted me to read out loud what I wrote. I just said you gave me an F, stood up and left stunned. I had an English teacher like this too. Nobody believed me until she randomly decided to make us do posters. Due the next day, I went above and beyond because I knew she liked crafty shit and figured she couldn't possibly give me a bad grade if I was creative. Oh, this poster is wonderful. Who made it? I did. Oh. And she literally threw it in the trash. What the actual duck? With other people present, care to elaborate on the situation and or aftermath a little bit? I can't imagine a teacher being able to just trash a student's assignment without immediately pulling it out going haha just kidding. And even that would be cruel. I had a Spanish teacher, and in order to gain other students' sympathy, she would make fun of one of the student, and kind of bully, not that badly but well, that student for this hour of class, of course. Other students would sometimes laugh because class was super boring, so it was like a show. I hated that. Of course she would pick the students that didn't reply back to her provocation, the low profile type. And of course she would use the perfect excuse just after being mean, no it's just a joke hee. Once that guy that never searched trouble to anyone was her victim of the day. She takes him as an example to describe a homeless guy on a picture. After only 10 ducking long minutes, he stands up and leaves the classroom crying. And when she stops him before he leaves, he tells her his dad died the previous night and push her away. Once the door closed behind him, she paused for a second and take a crying voice to repeat what he had just said. My dad just died crickry, poor baby. Before I realized it, she received my Spanish book in the face, and I called her an ugly slappy. My insult level isn't great in Spanish. Appropriate response. Duck this kind of bully teacher. I had one like that. I filmed her once and showed the video to the principal. I got detention for using my phone. She got fired a month later. Why do people ever go to these sorts of bullshit detentions? They can't physically force you to go, and if they try to increase punishment there will always be other teachers, or at least hopefully parents, that take your side. I had a bout of stomach flu which was so intense that it damaged my intestines, and as a result my body couldn't process certain foods for a while. This caused me severe pain. I mainly had cramps that were so bad I couldn't do anything useful anymore except curl up and wait for them to be over. It took me more than a month to figure out a very limited amount of safe stuff to eat, which I ended up slowly expanding on over time. I did miss a few weeks of school when it first started though. Directly after my math teacher's class she insisted I come to her and explain why I missed so many of her classes. I had a note from my GP ready, but she dismissed it. She told me she could tell that I wasn't sick, but that I was just lazy and lying to everyone, and that she was severely disappointed in me. I literally just walked away, which is the closest I ever got to having a temper tantrum in class. In retrospect I wish I had told her what I was really thinking, being that I was very disappointed in her. Edit. Typos and such. I was pretty sick for a while, and the teacher asked me why I wasn't in the last few classes, and I said I was sick. The teacher said, "You're not sick. You look completely healthy." I said, "Oh, look at you with the all-powerful eyes that can see disease inside of people at an instant." He kind of realized what he said, apologized and told me to sit. He didn't like me anymore, which is rare, and just kind of let me do my own thing for the rest of the semester. The other thing is, if you're back, wouldn't you be reasonably healthy again if you're back? Why did you miss class? I was sick. You don't look sick. Well, yeah, that's why I'm back now. When I was in high school we had this small angry teacher that played rugby, or at least tried to, that was always belittling students to feel better about himself. One day we had physical ed and our teacher couldn't come, so the little and always moody teacher that played rugby came to replace her. Little teacher was trying to show off his skills at rugby and making our class play some game where we had to tackle who had the ball. We didn't tackle hard enough, so the little guy joined to tackle some students and show off his grandness. He was having fun being unstoppable and yelling at us if that was all we could do. I was kinda mad, so I just went running at full speed at him. Little teacher got tackled and hit the ground so hard. That was something our class laughed about all year. Edit. For those wondering, he used to despise and treat us like he was reaffirming his manliness, though he had some good points too and was kinda crazy. It didn't seem like a student-teacher relationship, so it wasn't that boring most of the time. I guess that's the reason why most of us still remember that little moody teacher. What did the teacher do after? He was a bit surprised. From that point he acknowledged me as a potential rugby player and then told the rest to be equally brave. What I mean by acknowledge is that he often told me to give rugby a try where he played it. There was one guy who didn't have really good grades. He went to play rugby and somehow got an A grade in technology. Guess who was the teacher of that subject? My 8th grade math teacher. She was the absolute worst and ruined any appreciation I had for mathematics forever. She'd purposely skip chapters and mark correct answers wrong if you wrote numbers a certain way. For example, you never put that little dash at the top of your number 7s or your answer was wrong. Also pop quizzes. She had this rule where a pop quiz could cover any material out of the book even if it was something we hadn't gone over yet. And it's not like we could take the book home to study. It was one of those classes where the textbook had to be left in the classroom. I just quit doing any work for her after that. It royally pissed her off. Ugh. I had a maths teacher who marked my answer wrong for writing my 7 with a little line through the middle, as I didn't underscore my 1s, which prevented me from getting into the top class when I was maybe 14 or so. Duck her. When I was a senior in high school I had an AP English teacher that would grade people based on how much he liked them essentially. I had long hair and stretched earlobes and she despised me even though I was an excellent student in all aspects. She claimed I didn't turn in assignments on time to justify my grades, so I spoke with my guidance counselor and she investigated for me. Turns out she had sorted completed assignments into piles of good and bad and would arbitrarily grade the papers based on who she felt sucked up to her the most that day. I presented a book report on the Odyssey, which was by far the longest and most detailed presentation of the whole class, and she gave me a D. I told her, "Duck you. This is the end of your career," and walked out because I had sent an identical copy to the guidance counselor. She presented it to the school board, eventually got her fired, and the best part was she was also a driver's ed instructor and lost her job doing that as well. Apparently I wasn't the first to speak up about her, but I was the one that had the nail in the coffin, and it felt great. Did we have the same teacher? Because I have a very similar story. Teacher hated me because she was spouting some bullshit about how red pistachios don't and never have existed. And me being the pretentious duck I was, I had to prove her wrong. So I bought a whole bag on the internet and dropped them on her desk a few weeks later. She had never liked me, but after that I couldn't pull a C in her English class. I told my guidance counselor my senior year to put me in remedial English just so I could pass and wouldn't have to take her. Small school. She was the only non-remedial senior English teacher, so they made a separate class with a student's mom being the teacher. She was only qualified to be a sub technically, and it consisted of me and all the senior boys who wanted to blow off a harder class. You can imagine how well that went. I then went on to graduate with a master's degree in English and a 3.89 GPA, and all the students and other administration of that school who said she would best prepare you for college English can suck it, because all she taught was syntax and didn't even teach us how to do an annotated bibliography or format MLA or APA papers. She taught us nothing useful. So HA. 8th grade science class. God, I hated her. For the sake of this, let's say her name was Mrs. B. Early on in the year, Mrs. B had given us a science fair project due in January. We had several class periods over the course of those months as well to work on it. My project was creating an unbeatable tic-tac-toe program. Did work properly, but that's beside the point right now, because it would take significantly longer to have 20 people. The amount of tests we had to do, each play 3 rounds with the thing, so I asked her if I could do fewer and she agreed, allowing me to only do 7 people, which I got done shortly before Christmas break. Only about 1.5 school weeks until the project was due. I make sure to thank her for letting me do fewer, as I would never have gotten it done in time otherwise. She turns to me with this confused look and says something to the effect of, "I never said that. You have to do 20 trials like everyone else." I was so insanely furious. I even got a witness who had overheard her give me a lower number come in as evidence. Both me and my witness ended up in detention. I did end up getting the project done, but barely, and it was rushed as hell. I still occasionally think of it and want to punch a wall. Edit. Apparently I had a typo. I had meant to type didn't work properly, but the way it came out. Not only do I sound like a humble brat, but I also started an argument later down the comment chain. Oop. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.